The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the Kryn ambassador stepped forward. His body was covered in dark armor that clicked and shifted with each movement. Forearms crossed over his chest as he spoke, his voice harsh and grinding like stones scraping together. The Kelrath Union has 30 cycles to surrender their worlds, he announced. After that, we will take them by force. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy warning. Ambassador Thressa of the Kelrath stood from her seat, her fur standing on end. She looked small compared to most of the other species in the room. Her people were scholars and artists, not warriors. Everyone knew this. The Kelrath have done nothing to threaten the Kryn Dominion, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Why do you demand our worlds? The Kryn ambassador's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Because we can. Because you are weak. Because your worlds sit in space we desire. Do you need more reasons? Thressa looked around the chamber at the 40 other species represented there. Surely someone would speak up. Surely someone would defend them. But one by one, the other ambassadors looked away. Some studied their data tablets. Others whispered to their aides. No one met her eyes. The council speaker, a massive creature that floated in a tank of liquid, finally spoke. The council cannot interfere in territorial disputes between member states. If the Kryn wish to expand and the Kelrath cannot defend themselves, this is the way of the galaxy. But they're threatening to kill millions of my people. Thressa's voice broke. Then perhaps you should surrender, the speaker said coldly. The council values stability. A war would be bad for everyone. Thressa stood there, trembling. Her people had lived in peace for thousands of years. They had shared their art and knowledge with the galaxy. And now when they needed help, everyone turned away. Everyone except one. Ambassador Chen of Earth stood up slowly. She was a small woman by human standards, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been quiet during the entire session, but now all eyes turned to her. And what will humanity do? The Kryn ambassador asked mockingly. Will the newest species in the council try to threaten the Dominion? Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. No threats, Ambassador. Just a question. How many worlds does the Kryn Dominion control? Over 200, he said proudly. More than any empire in this sector. Impressive, Chen said. And how many of those worlds did you conquer? Most of them. The Kryn take what we want. It is our way. I see, Chen said quietly. Thank you for clarifying that. She sat back down and said nothing more. The session ended shortly after. The Kryn ambassador left, pleased with himself. The other species filed out quickly, avoiding the Kelrath delegation. No one wanted to be associated with the losing side. Thressa walked alone through the council gardens afterward. The artificial sky above showed stars from 100 different worlds. She had always found it beautiful. Now it just reminded her that her people were alone in the universe. Ambassador Thressa. She turned to find Ambassador Chen approaching. The human woman walked slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. Ambassador Chen, Thressa said, wiping her eyes. You don't need to say anything. I understand. Humanity is still new to the council. You can't risk making enemies with the Kryn. I don't blame you. Chen stopped a few feet away. Do you remember when humanity first joined the council? 50 years ago? Thressa nodded. Of course. My predecessor was the one who sponsored your application. Yes, and do you remember what happened after? Thressa did remember. Many species had tried to take advantage of humanity's ignorance. Trade deals designed to cheat them, territory claims on human colonies, attempts to force unfair treaties. It had been the Kelrath who stepped in, the Kelrath who explained how council politics really worked, the Kelrath who protected humanity until they learned to protect themselves. Your people helped us when we were weak and alone, Chen said softly. You asked for nothing in return. You showed us kindness when everyone else saw us as easy prey. It was the right thing to do, Thressa said. Yes, it was. Chen stepped closer. The Kryn have already started bombing your outer colonies, haven't they? Thressa's shoulders slumped. 3 colonies. They said it was a demonstration of their seriousness. Over 1 million dead in the first strikes. Chen's face hardened. Her eyes, which had been kind a moment ago, turned cold as ice. You helped us when we were alone, she said. We will not abandon you now. No, Thressa said quickly. You can't fight the Kryn. They have the strongest military in the galaxy. Humanity only has 8 defense fleets. You would be destroyed. I came here to say goodbye, Ambassador. To thank you for your friendship. But I won't let you die for us. Chen smiled again, and this time it was frightening. Let me tell you something about humans, old friend. About what we do to those who harm our pack. Your pack? It's a human concept. In our history, humans lived in small groups called packs. They took care of each other, protected each other, and if anything threatened the pack, every member would fight to the death. Chen's voice dropped lower. The Kelrath are our pack, Thressa. And someone just hurt our pack. Thressa felt something strange, hope mixed with fear. What are you saying? I'm saying that the Kryn made a mistake today. They think humanity is weak because we smile and talk about peace. They think we're harmless because we haven't shown our teeth. Chen pulled out a communication device. But there's a reason we talk about peace so much, Thressa. There's a reason we locked away certain weapons after our final war on Earth. There's a reason we joined the Council and tried so hard to be friendly. What reason? Chen looked up at the artificial stars. Because we know what we're capable of. We've seen what happens when humans go to war. We've lived through it. And we promised ourselves we would never do it again unless we absolutely had to. She looked back at Thressa. But you helped us. You were kind to us. You're our friends. And we will burn down the galaxy before we let anyone hurt our friends. She activated the communicator. This is Ambassador Chen, authorization code Alpha Prime 7. Transmit the following message to Earth, Mars, and Luna Command. Favor called in. Total commitment authorized. Rules of engagement are suspended. Wake everything up, a voice responded from the device. Confirmed, Ambassador. Shall we begin recall? Yes. All human vessels are to return to home systems immediately. All diplomatic staff are to evacuate to secure locations. Initiate Protocol Cerberus. Protocol Cerberus confirmed. God help us all. Chen closed the connection and looked at Thressa. We need to evacuate your people. Every civilian, every child. Send us the locations of your population centers. Human ships will begin extraction within the next cycle. What about your military? Thressa asked. They're coming. But first, they need to prepare. Chen started walking back toward the council building. The galaxy has never seen humanity at war, Thressa. They've seen our defense fleets doing exercises. They've seen our security forces. But they've never seen what we built in secret, what we hid away because it scared us. And what did you build? Chen stopped and looked back. In the artificial starlight, her expression was both sad and determined. Everything we needed to make sure we would never be helpless again. The Kryn think they're the strongest military in the galaxy. They're about to learn they were wrong. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving. They left their stations, their patrol routes, their diplomatic missions. Every vessel, from the smallest courier to the largest carrier, turned toward human space. Other species watched with relief. The humans were running away, just as expected. But deep in Earth's oceans, in facilities hidden beneath the ice of Europa, in massive complexes carved into the far side of Luna, lights began turning on. Doors sealed for 50 years started opening. And things that humanity had sworn to never use again slowly came to life. The Kryn Dominion celebrated that night. They had faced down the Council and won. The Kelrath would be theirs within a month, and the humans had proven themselves cowards by running away. They had no idea what was coming. The Kryn Dominion moved quickly after the Council session. Their fleets jumped into Kelrath systems and began systematic attacks. 3 more colonies fell in the first week. The Kryn broadcast images of destruction across the galaxy as a warning to others who might resist them. The Galactic Council did nothing. They issued statements of concern and called for peaceful resolution, but no one sent help. The Kelrath were dying and the galaxy watched, but the humans did not watch. They acted. Massive colony ships appeared in Kelrath space, not warships but civilian vessels, cargo haulers, medical ships, transport carriers. They came by the hundreds, jumping into contested systems even as Kryn warships patrolled nearby. On the Kelrath homeworld, Thressa watched in amazement as human ships landed in city after city. She walked through the capital's main spaceport and saw something she hadn't expected. Human volunteers were everywhere, helping Kelrath families board the ships. They carried children who were too scared to walk. They helped elderly Kelrath up the ramps. They spoke in soft voices, trying to calm people who were leaving their homes forever. A young human woman, barely into adulthood, knelt beside a Kelrath child who was crying. "It's okay," she said gently. "We're going somewhere safe. You'll like Earth. We have big forests there and you can climb trees all day if you want." The child sniffled. "Will my parents be there?" "They're on the ship already waiting for you. Come on, I'll take you to them." The young woman picked up the child and carried her toward the loading ramp, humming a soft song. Thressa felt tears in her eyes. These humans were so gentle, so caring. How could these be the same people who Ambassador Chen said would go to war? A human man in a dark uniform approached her. He looked older, with scars on his face and gray in his hair. "Ambassador Thressa? I'm Colonel Martinez, Earth Defense Force. I need to talk to you about the evacuation schedule." They walked to a quiet corner of the spaceport. Martinez pulled up a holographic display showing the Kelrath Union's worlds. "We've evacuated 12 colonies so far," he said. 2 million people safely in human space. But the Kryn are accelerating their attacks. We estimate you have maybe 20 cycles before they reach your core worlds. "What about your military?" Thressa asked. "When will your warships arrive?" Martinez's expression didn't change. "They're preparing, Ambassador. But I need you to trust that we know what we're doing. For now, our job is getting your people out. But the Kryn will just take our empty worlds. Let them." Martinez closed the display. "Worlds can be retaken. People can't be brought back from the dead. We learned that lesson on Earth the hard way. Over the next 10 cycles, human civilian ships worked constantly. They evacuated every Kelrath civilian they could reach, often arriving just hours before Kryn fleets. The Kryn didn't interfere much. They found it amusing that humans were doing their work for them, clearing out the populations before the Dominion took the planets. But other species in the Council noticed something odd. Human industrial output had increased dramatically. Energy readings from Earth's system had jumped by 400%. Ship construction facilities were running at maximum capacity, and vast amounts of resources were being moved to classified locations. Council Intelligence Officer Vex studied the reports in his office on the Council station. He was a Thalian, a species known for their analytical minds, and something about the human activity bothered him. "They're not running," he muttered to himself. "They're preparing." He pulled up ship tracking data. Human warships hadn't fled. They had returned to human space, yes, but they weren't hiding. They were docked at stations being refitted, upgraded. Their crews were on leave, but not relaxing. They were training, drilling, practicing. Vex opened another file marked Top Secret. A Kryn spy had infiltrated a facility on Mars 3 cycles ago. The spy's last report was disturbing. The written portion was brief. "Facility contains biological modification chambers. Humans are volunteering for genetic enhancement. Strength increased by 300%. Bone density doubled. Neural response time cut in half. Pain tolerance," the report ended there. But there was a video file attached. Vex had watched it once. Once was enough. The video showed a human soldier who had undergone the modifications. She was demonstrating her abilities for observers. She picked up weights that should have been impossible for a creature her size. She moved with speed that seemed unnatural. And then, to prove the pain tolerance, she had asked a technician to break her arm. Vex still remembered the sound of the bone snapping. But what haunted him was that the soldier hadn't screamed. She had just looked at her broken arm, nodded, and asked the medical team to reset it so she could continue the demonstration. The Kryn spy's final transmission had been simple. They do it to themselves, willingly. What kind of species does this? The spy had been found in his quarters, rocking back and forth, muttering the same thing over and over. The Kryn had extracted him, but his mind was broken. He couldn't stop talking about the humans, about what they were building, about what they were willing to become. Vex closed the file and looked out his window at the stars. "The Kryn have no idea what they've started," he whispered. 15 cycles after the council session, a Kryn war fleet of 300 ships jumped into the Kelrath system of Thera. It was one of the last populated Kelrath worlds, home to 15 million people. The Kryn came to take it by force. They found it defended by a single human ship. The UES Indomitable was a destroyer, small by capital ship standards. It hung in orbit around Thera, alone against 300 Kryn warships. The Kryn fleet commander, Admiral Zrax, couldn't believe what he was seeing. "One ship?" he hissed to his bridge crew. "The humans send one ship to defend an entire world?" "Sensors confirm, Admiral. It's a Dakota-class destroyer. Crew complement of 200. Standard weapons loadout." Zrax clicked his mandibles in amusement. "This will be over in minutes." "Open a channel." The human ship's captain appeared on the screen. She was a woman with dark skin and calm eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform. Behind her, the bridge of the Indomitable looked clean and quiet. Her crew worked at their stations as if this were a routine patrol. "I am Admiral Zrax of the Kryn Dominion," he announced. "You are outnumbered 300 to 1. Retreat now or be destroyed." The human captain tilted her head slightly. This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo of the United Earth ship Indomitable. This world is under human protection. You need to leave. Srax laughed, the sound harsh through the translator. You're serious? You think one destroyer can stop my fleet? I think you should leave, Okonkwo repeated. Her voice never changed. Calm, professional, like she was reading from a manual. Human, I will give you one chance to run away. My sensors show your ship has full engines. Jump to hyperspace and live. No. Then you're a fool. Srax cut the channel. All ships advance. Target that destroyer. Let's show the galaxy what happens to human arrogance. The Kryn fleet moved forward, 300 warships against one. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Okonkwo watched them come. Her crew didn't speak. They didn't need to. They all knew what was about to happen. Weapons, Okonkwo said quietly. You may fire when ready. Ma'am, her weapons officer replied, we can't win this fight. I know. Then why? Because they need to know we were here. Because our orders are to hold this line. Because 15 million Kelrath are on that planet below us and we promised them they were safe. Okonkwo smiled slightly. Besides, we're not trying to win. We're just trying to make them commit. The Kryn fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the Indomitable. The destroyer's shields flared and held, but barely. Return fire from the human ship was precise and disciplined. 2 Kryn cruisers exploded. A third lost power and drifted. But there were too many. The Indomitable shuddered as its shields failed. Hull breaches appeared across its frame. Life support failed on 3 decks. The ship was dying. Captain Okonkwo stood up from her chair. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. I repeat, abandon ship. Escape pods launching in 30 seconds. Captain, the fleet. I said abandon ship. That's an order. She turned to her communication officer. Send one more transmission. Maximum power. All frequencies. Yes, ma'am. Ready when you are. Okonkwo took a breath. Then she spoke clearly into the comm. Threat confirmed. Rules of engagement suspended. Authorization code. Remember Earth. All fleets. Weapons free. She paused, then added quietly. Tell them we held the line. The escape pods launched, scattering into space. The Kryn ignored them, focusing on the dying destroyer. Admiral Zarax watched with satisfaction as the human ship burned. But then something happened that would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Indomitable didn't explode. Instead, its engines roared to full power. The crippled destroyer turned and accelerated directly toward the Kryn flagship. Faster, faster, it's ramming us, someone screamed on the Kryn bridge. Zrax tried to move his ship, but it was too late. The Indomitable, burning and broken, crashed into the flagship's command section at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion lit up the entire system. The Kryn flagship simply ceased to exist. 3 nearby cruisers were caught in the blast and destroyed. Debris rained across the fleet. In that moment of shock and confusion, something else happened. All across the galaxy, in a dozen systems, human fleets appeared. Not the small defense force. The war began in 12 systems at once. Human fleets appeared from hyperspace with perfect coordination, striking Kryn positions across the entire front line. The galaxy watched in shock as the species everyone thought was peaceful suddenly became something else entirely. In the Thera system, where Captain Okonkwo had died, the surviving Kryn fleet was still trying to recover from the Indomitable's final strike when 3 human carrier groups arrived. 15 capital ships, 40 cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels. The acting Kryn commander sent a surrender signal immediately. He had seen what one human ship was willing to do. He didn't want to face an entire fleet. The human response was brief. Denied. You fired on our ship. Now you answer for it. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Human fighters swarmed the Kryn fleet like angry insects. They moved in patterns the Kryn had never seen before, coordinating with precision that seemed impossible. When Kryn point defense destroyed human fighters, the pilots ejected at the last second, and their fighters continued on automated programs, ramming into Kryn ships. Human destroyers worked in wolf packs, targeting specific systems on Kryn cruisers. They didn't try to destroy ships outright. They disabled engines, knocked out weapons, left Kryn vessels floating helpless in space. Then human marines boarded them. That's when the Kryn learned something terrifying. The humans on the civilian evacuation ships had been gentle and kind. These humans were different, taller, stronger, faster. Their armor was black and heavy, making them look like machines more than living beings. They moved through Kryn ships like death itself. A Kryn warrior was considered one of the finest fighters in the galaxy. Their natural armor, forearms, and aggressive instincts made them formidable in close combat. But the human Marines cut through them like they were nothing. On the Kryn cruiser Vengeance, Commander Thrax rallied his warriors for a last stand. 50 Kryn soldiers fully armed, defending the ship's core against a boarding party of just 8 human Marines. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Thrax survived only because he fell beneath the bodies of his soldiers early in the fight. He lay there pretending to be dead, listening to the sounds above him. The humans didn't speak. They just moved efficiently from target to target, their weapons firing with mechanical precision. When the shooting stopped, Thrax heard something that made his blood freeze. One of the humans was humming. A soft, tuneless sound, like this was just another day at work. Later, when human forces found him and took him prisoner, Thrax asked his guard one question. "What are you?" The Marine, a woman with scars across her face and cold eyes, answered simply, "We're what humans become when you hurt our friends." The war spread quickly. Human fleets hit Kryn supply lines, command stations, and military bases with surgical precision. They knew exactly where to strike, as if they had been planning this campaign for decades. Because they had been. The Kryn tried to adapt. They sent their best fleets to counterattack human positions, but the humans fought differently than any species the Kryn had faced before. When human ships were damaged, they didn't retreat. They continued fighting until they physically couldn't anymore. And when they couldn't fight, they rammed. A Kryn battleship commander watched in horror as a human cruiser, burning from a dozen wounds, accelerated straight toward his ship. His point defense destroyed the cruiser's bridge, then its engines. The ship broke apart, but its largest piece still crashed into the battleship's side, rupturing the hull in 3 places. The Kryn began to fear human ships that were damaged more than those at full strength. Because damaged human vessels were unpredictable and willing to trade their lives for any tactical advantage. But it wasn't just the ships. The humans employed weapons that violated galactic warfare conventions. Kinetic bombardment turned Kryn military bases into craters. Biological agents targeted Kryn physiology specifically, rendering entire garrisons unconscious in seconds. Nanite swarms disabled Kryn technology while leaving everything else untouched. When Council observers protested, Ambassador Chen's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "We never signed your conventions. You wrote those rules before we joined the Council. If the Kryn want to fight under galactic law, they should have considered that before they bombed civilian colonies." The Council was horrified, but also confused. These humans had seemed so reasonable, so friendly. Where had this capacity for violence come from? The answer was simple. It had always been there. Humans had just been very, very careful to hide it. On the Kelrath homeworld, now far behind human lines, Ambassador Thressa worked in a command center with human officers. She was helping coordinate the return of Kelrath civilians to their worlds as human forces secured each system. But she also watched the war reports, and they disturbed her deeply. "Is this really necessary?" she asked a human general named Rodriguez. "The Kryn are surrendering in some systems, but your forces are still aggressive." Rodriguez, a tall man, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much war, looked at her sadly. "Ambassador, do you remember what the Kryn did to your colony on Thera, before Captain Okonkwo held the line?" Thressa nodded. The Kryn had bombed cities, targeted schools and hospitals, over 1 million dead in a single day. "We found the reports from your colonies," Rodriguez continued. "We saw the images. Human medics tried to save your wounded, but there were so many." His voice hardened. "The Kryn didn't fight military targets, Ambassador. They murdered civilians to make a point. So yes, we're being aggressive, because we want them to understand that this can never happen again." A young human officer approached and saluted. "General, we've captured a Kryn communication. They're asking why we're still fighting when they're trying to surrender." "Tell them they can surrender when we're done making our point," Rodriguez said coldly. "Not before." The war entered its 3rd month. 15 Kryn core worlds were now under siege. Their military was in retreat on every front. Species across the galaxy wondered how long it would take for the Kryn to collapse completely. The Kryn, Emperor Zarek the Conqueror, watched his empire burn from his throne world. His military advisors assured him they could hold their home system. They had 2,000 warships defending it, plus orbital defense platforms and ground-based weapons. The humans had maybe 400 ships left after months of brutal fighting. "Let them come," Zarek said. "We will destroy them here and this war will end." But the humans didn't attack the fleet. They attacked the planet. From high orbit, human ships dropped metal rods the size of buildings. No explosives, just metal. But they fell from space at incredible speeds, and when they hit the planet's surface, the kinetic energy was like nuclear weapons. Earthquakes rippled across the Kryn homeworld. Tsunamis rose from the oceans. Cities shook. The Emperor's palace cracked. And through it all, the human fleet stayed just out of range of the Kryn weapons. "They're not trying to invade," one of the Kryn admirals realized. "They're trying to break us." When Kryn ships moved to intercept the human vessels, they discovered something new. The humans activated weapons they had never used before. Missiles that simply appeared inside Kryn ships, bypassing shields entirely. Energy beams that cut through armor like it wasn't there. Technology the galaxy had never seen. The battle for the Kryn homeworld lasted 8 hours. At the end, 78% of the human fleet was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Every human ship bore scars. Many were barely functional. But the Kryn fleet was gone. All 2,000 ships, destroyed or disabled. The orbital platforms were silent. And the Emperor was broadcasting surrender from his bunker deep underground. Admiral Zhang, commander of the human fleet, sat in her damaged flagship and listened to the Emperor's words. Her uniform was torn. Blood dried on her face from a head wound. Around her, her bridge crew looked like survivors of an apocalypse. "He wants to surrender," her communication officer said quietly. Zhang was quiet for a long moment. She thought of Captain Okonkwo, who had died holding a line. She thought of the Marines who had boarded Kryn ships and never came back. She thought of the Kelrath children she had helped evacuate, their eyes wide with fear. "Tell him we accept," she finally said. "But give him our terms. And make sure every species in the galaxy hears them." The terms were brutal. The Kryn Dominion would be dissolved. Every Kryn military world would host council peacekeepers for 50 years. Kryn leadership would face war crimes trials. All military technology would be destroyed or turned over to the council. And 25% of Kryn GDP for the next century would go to rebuilding Kelrath worlds. The Emperor protested. His people protested. How dare the humans demand so much? Admiral Zhang's response was broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. "You're right to be angry, because justice would be doing to you exactly what you did to the Kelrath. Bombing your cities, targeting your civilians, killing your children. Be grateful that we're human enough to offer mercy instead. Be grateful that we stopped at breaking your military, because we could have done so much worse." The Kryn accepted the terms. They had no choice. Their military was destroyed. Their economy was in ruins, and every species in the galaxy had watched the war and leer. The war had been over for 2 weeks, but Ambassador Chen still saw it every time she closed her eyes. She stood in her office on the council station, looking at a data pad that showed the final casualty count. 1,200,000 humans dead, another 800,000 wounded so badly they would never fully recover, 40% of humanity's military fleet destroyed, entire stations gone, ships that would never fly again, the price of keeping a promise. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," she said quietly. Ambassador Thressa entered, carrying a small box. The Kelrath looked older than she had 3 months ago. They all did. War-aged everyone. "I wanted to thank you," Thressa said. "My people are returning to our worlds. Human ships are helping us rebuild. You saved us." Chen set down the data pad. "At a terrible cost, I know. I've seen the casualty reports." Thressa set the box on Chen's desk. "That's why I brought this. It's not much. It can't bring back the dead, but it's all we have to offer." Chen opened the box. Inside was a medal, handcrafted from Kelrath metals. It was beautiful, with intricate designs showing humans and Kelrath together. "The Kelrath Council voted unanimously," Thressa explained. Every human who fought in this war will receive the Star of Kelrath. It's our highest honor. It's given to those who sacrifice everything for others. She paused. We have 1,200,000 medals ready. One for each human who died, and we're making 800,000 more for the wounded. Chen picked up the medal. It was heavy in her hand. They didn't do it for medals, Thressa. I know. They did it because we were friends. Because humans protect their friends no matter the cost. Thressa's voice broke. I just wish there had been another way. So do I. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Chen's communication device buzzed. It was an urgent message from Earth. I have to take this, Chen said. The message was from the Council of Earth, humanity's governing body. They wanted to speak with her immediately via secure channel. Chen activated the hologram and 5 faces appeared. The 5 leaders who guided humanity through its darkest hours. Premier Sarah Okafor of the African Union spoke first. Ambassador Chen, we've reviewed your reports on the war's conclusion. Yes, Premier. The Kryn have accepted all terms? They have. War crimes trials begin next month. Reparations will start flowing to the Kelrath within the year. Good. Okafor looked tired. And the other species in the council? Terrified, Chen admitted. Every species that ignored the Kelrath's pleas is now trying to make friends with us. They're offering trade deals, military alliances, technology exchanges. They're desperate to stay on our good side. As they should be, muttered Director Liu of the Asian Cooperative. But that's a problem, said Chancellor Martinez of the European Federation. We went to war to protect our friends. Now the entire galaxy is afraid of us. That's not what we wanted, isn't it? Asked President Jackson of the American states. We've spent 50 years being the nice species, the friendly newcomers. And where did it get us? When the Kelrath needed help, everyone turned away. The galaxy respects strength, not kindness. We can be both, Chen said firmly. We can be strong and kind. We can protect our friends and still work for peace, so can we? Okafor asked. Ambassador, I'm sending you something. It should be in your files now. Chen opened the new file. It was a report from Council Intelligence. Her blood ran cold as she read it. 3 species had begun military buildups immediately after the war ended. 2 more were developing weapons similar to human technology. And 15 species had sent secret communications to each other, discussing the human problem. They're afraid of us, Chen said slowly. And fear makes people do stupid things. Exactly, Martinez said. We won the war, Ambassador. But we may have planted the seeds for the next one. The council meeting ended shortly after. Chen sat alone in her office thinking about what humanity had become. They had shown the galaxy their teeth. Now they had to figure out how to put them away without looking weak. Her door opened again. This time it was Colonel James Harrison, a Marine who had fought in the boarding actions. He walked with a limp now, courtesy of a Kryn blade that had cut through his armor. Ambassador, there's something you need to see. He led her to a medical bay on the station. Inside, human wounded were recovering from their injuries. But they weren't alone. Kelrath medics worked alongside human doctors. Kelrath volunteers helped feed those who couldn't use their arms. Kelrath children drew pictures for the wounded Marines. They come every day, Harrison explained. The Kelrath. They want to help take care of our people. They say it's the least they can do. Chen watched a Kelrath child, no more than 6 years old, carefully place a drawing next to a sleeping Marine's bed. The drawing showed a human and a Kelrath holding hands under a sun. That Marine lost both legs, Harrison said quietly. Saved a Kelrath family during the evacuation of Thera. Carried them through fire to get them on a ship. The family visits him every day now. They call him Uncle. Chen felt tears in her eyes. This is why we fought, she whispered. Not for fear. Not for power. For this. Yes, ma'am. A week later, Chen traveled to Earth for a memorial service. 1,200,000 names were being added to the Wall of the Fallen in Geneva. The wall was a massive structure of black stone, started after Earth's final war 50 years ago. It listed everyone who had died in human conflicts, a reminder of the cost of violence. Now it would grow again. Chen stood before the wall as workers carefully etched new names into the stone. Each name represented a person, a son or daughter, a parent, a friend, someone who had chosen to fight for others. An old woman approached Chen. She looked fragile, her hair white, her hands shaking. But her eyes were clear. Ambassador Chen? Yes? My name is Sarah Okonkwo. Captain Okonkwo was my granddaughter. Chen felt her heart break. I'm so sorry. Your granddaughter was a hero. She held the line when, I know what she did. Sarah interrupted gently. I know she died well, but I need to ask you something. Anything. Was it worth it? Chen wanted to say yes immediately, to tell this grieving grandmother that her granddaughter's sacrifice had meaning, but she owed the woman honesty. I don't know, Chen admitted. We saved the Kelrath. Millions of people are alive because of what your granddaughter and others like her did. But the cost... She gestured at the wall of names. Is any victory worth this many dead? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched the wall, her fingers tracing letters that weren't carved yet but would be soon. My granddaughter used to tell me about the Kelrath, Sarah said, about how kind they were, how they helped humanity when we were new to the galaxy. She said they reminded her of everything good about people. The old woman smiled sadly. She also said that if anyone ever threatened them, she would fight. Because protecting good people from bad people is what gives life meaning. She believed that until her last breath. Sarah looked at Chen. Was it worth it? I can't answer that for everyone. But for my granddaughter? Yes, she died doing what she believed in. She died protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. That's worth something. Chen watched as the workers continued adding names. Each one a story. Each one a sacrifice. We made a promise, Chen said quietly. When humanity joined the council, we promised ourselves we would never be helpless again. We would never let others be helpless either, if we could help it. Your granddaughter kept that promise. So did all of them. Sarah touched the wall again. Remember them, Ambassador? When you're making decisions in the council, when you're deciding whether to use humanity's strength for peace or war, remember what they gave. I will. I promise. Sarah nodded and walked away, leaving Chen alone with the wall and the names. That night, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Every species attended. The chamber was full of nervous energy. Everyone knew why they were there. The council speaker addressed the assembly. We have called this session to discuss the recent conflict and its implications for galactic stability. The human military capability demonstrated in this war has raised concerns among many member species. Chen stood at the human delegation's position. She knew this was coming. The galaxy had watched humanity destroy the Kryn Dominion in 3 months. Now they wanted to know if humans were a threat. Many species have asked us to limit our military, Chen began, to sign treaties restricting our weapons, to prove we are not a threat to the Council. Nods around the chamber. Yes, that's exactly what they wanted. Our answer is no. Shocked silence. Chen continued, her voice carrying across the chamber. We will not limit our ability to defend ourselves and our friends. We will not sign treaties that make us helpless. We went to war because the Kelrath were threatened, and the Council did nothing. We will not put ourselves in a position where we must rely on the Council's mercy for protection. But your weapons, one ambassador started. Our weapons won a war in 3 months against the galaxy's most feared military, Chen interrupted. And we could have won in 3 weeks if we had wanted to use everything we built. We showed restraint, we showed mercy. We stopped when the Kryn surrendered instead of destroying them completely. That should tell you everything you need to know about human intentions. You're asking us to trust you, the speaker said. No, Chen replied. I'm telling you that trust must be earned on both sides. The 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Thressa walked through the rebuilt capital city of her homeworld. Human construction teams had helped rebuild everything the Kryn destroyed. The buildings looked almost exactly as they had before, except for one difference. In the central square where a fountain once stood, there was now a monument. It showed a human and a Kelrath standing together, facing outward, protecting each other. At the base were carved 1,200,000 names. Every human who died in the war. Kelrath citizens visited the monument every day. They left flowers. They taught their children the names. They made sure that no one would ever forget what humanity had done for them. Thressa stood before the monument with tears in her eyes. A young human woman approached her, wearing a simple civilian outfit. But Thressa recognized her. This was Lieutenant Jessica Chen, who had fought in the boarding actions. She walked with a slight limp now. It's beautiful, Jessica said, looking at the monument. It's not enough, Thressa replied. How do you thank someone for dying for you? Jessica was quiet for a moment. You live well. You build a good society. You help others when you can. That's what they would have wanted. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. Jessica touched the monument. I joined the military because I wanted to explore the galaxy. Then the war happened and I saw things I can't forget. Did things I can't forget, do you regret it? Jessica thought about that. She remembered fighting in the corridors of Kryn ships, remembered the fear and the blood, remembered friends who didn't come home. But she also remembered Kelrath children she had helped evacuate, families she had protected, people who were alive because she had fought. No, she finally said. I don't regret it, but I hope we never have to do it again. So do I. They stood together in comfortable silence, human and Kelrath, in a city that had been destroyed and rebuilt, a symbol of what their species could accomplish together. Across the galaxy, human ships were returning to their pre-war stations. The massive fleets were being reduced. Dreadnoughts returned to their hidden bases. The soldiers who had been enhanced for war were slowly transitioning back to civilian life, though many struggled with what they had become. On Earth, in a small apartment in Tokyo, former Marine Sergeant David Park sat with a therapist. He looked normal, but his body had been changed during the war. He was stronger, faster, more durable than a regular human. The modifications had helped him survive, but now in peacetime they made him feel like a monster. I broke a door handle yesterday, he said quietly. Just grabbed it to open my apartment and it snapped. I didn't even try to break it. I just forgot to be gentle. You're adjusting, the therapist said. It takes time to learn to control your strength. It's not just the strength, it's everything. I don't sleep like I used to. I can hear conversations through walls. My heart beats slower. I'm not human anymore. I'm something else. You're still human, David. You just have enhancements. The Kryn didn't think so. They called us monsters, said no species should modify themselves like this. And maybe they were right. The therapist leaned forward. David, do you remember why you volunteered for enhancement? He did remember. A briefing room, 50 years after humanity joined the Council. An officer explaining that the galaxy was dangerous, and humanity needed soldiers who could match the strongest species in combat. Volunteers only. No pressure. David had volunteered because he believed in protecting people. Because he thought humanity should be able to defend itself. Because someone had to be willing to become a weapon so that others could stay safe. I remember, he said. I just wonder if it was worth it. Ask the Kelrath. I think they'll tell you it was. Across Earth, similar conversations were happening. Soldiers who had seen too much war trying to find peace. Pilots who had lost friends trying to move forward. Families mourning those who never came home. Humanity was healing, but slowly. Scars like these took time. In the Galactic Council, things had changed dramatically. The human delegation now had a very different status. When Ambassador Chen walked into the chamber, other species paid attention. No one ignored humanity anymore. A new treaty was being proposed. The Mutual Defense Alliance. It stated simply that any attack on a member species would be considered an attack on all members. Species could join voluntarily, but once in, they were committed to defending each other. 30 species signed on the first day. They wanted humanity's protection. They wanted to be part of the pack that humans would fight for. But some species were resistant. The Therum Empire, a proud military power, refused to sign. Their ambassador stood before the council and declared, "The Therum do not need human protection. We are strong enough to defend ourselves." Chen simply nodded. That's your choice. We're not forcing anyone to join. But understand this. If you're attacked and you're not part of the alliance, we won't come to help. We learned our lesson. We can't protect everyone, so we'll protect those who choose to stand with us. The Therum ambassador bristled. Are you threatening us? No, I'm explaining reality. Humanity lost over 1 million people in the last war. We won't risk that again for species who refuse to be our allies. If you want to stand alone, you can, but you will be alone. 2 weeks later, the Therum Empire signed the treaty. So did every other major power in the galaxy. No one wanted to be left outside humanity's protection. The Council also passed a new law, Article 1, Section 1. No member species shall take hostile action against the Kelrath Union or any species under human protection. Violation will be considered an act of war against humanity. It was the first time in the Council's 10,000-year history that a specific species was named in the fundamental laws. The Kelrath were now untouchable. Anyone who threatened them would face human retaliation. On a Kryn prison world, former Emperor Zarek sat in a cell waiting for his war crimes trial. He had been the conqueror, ruler of 200 worlds. Now he was a prisoner and his empire was dust. A human guard brought his evening meal. Zarek looked at the man and asked a question that had been bothering him for months. Why didn't you kill us all? You had the power. You destroyed our military. You could have bombed our worlds until nothing was left. Why did you stop? The guard set down the meal tray. He was older, with scars that suggested he had fought in the war. Because we're not you, the guard said simply. We fight when we have to. We kill when we must. But we don't commit genocide. We don't murder civilians. We're better than that. Even when we would have done it to you? Especially then. If we became like you, then what would be the point of fighting? We'd just be different monsters. Zarek thought about that after the guard left. The humans had beaten the Kryn with their own tactics. They had been ruthless and efficient. But they had also shown mercy when they could have shown none. And that, Zarek realized, was why they had won. Because they knew when to fight and when to stop. The Kryn had never learned that lesson. In a small classroom on the Kelrath homeworld, a teacher asked her students a question. Why did the Kryn lose the war? A young Kelrath child raised his hand. Because humanity had better weapons? No, the teacher said gently. The Kryn had good weapons too. Anyone else? Another child spoke up. Because humans were stronger? The Kryn were strong too. Think deeper. Why did humanity fight so hard? A third child, small for his age, said quietly. Because we were their friends. And humans protect their friends. The teacher smiled. Exactly. The Kryn fought for conquest, for territory, for power. Humans fought for friendship, for loyalty, for love, and that made all the difference. She pulled up images of the war, not the battles, but the moments in between. Human medics treating Kelrath wounded, human soldiers sharing rations with Kelrath refugees, human families adopting Kelrath children who had lost their parents. Humans taught us something important, the teacher continued. Strength isn't just about weapons or ships. Real strength comes from the connections we make, the bonds we form, the promises we keep. Humanity could have stood by and let us fall. Instead, they paid a terrible price to save us. That's the kind of strength that matters. The children listened quietly. They would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was respected and feared. But they would also grow up knowing that humans had died for them. That knowledge would shape their entire lives. 20 years later, Ambassador Chen stood in her office for the last time. She was retiring after 70 years of service to Earth. She had watched humanity go from a weak newcomer to one of the galaxy's most powerful species. Her replacement, a young man named David Park, entered the office. He had been a Marine during the war. Now he was a diplomat. Ambassador Chen, he said formally. I'm here to receive your final briefing, she smiled. You don't need a briefing, David, you know the job. You've seen the worst of what the galaxy can be. That's what worries me. I remember the war. I remember what we're capable of. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I lead us into another conflict? Chen walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Let me tell you what I've learned in 70 years. The galaxy respects strength, but they remember kindness. They fear our weapons, but they trust our word. We fought.